The city hums at a frequency all its own. Traffic pulses through arterial streets, machinery rattles behind brick walls, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wails. But if you pause in the right moment, in the quiet space between these human sounds, you might hear something else entirely. The sharp cry of a falcon echoing off glass towers. The soft chittering of a raccoon testing the latch on a garbage bin. The rustle of a fox padding through a garden after midnight. The city, it turns out, is far wilder than it seems. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. Tonight, we're stepping into the human jungle, not the wilderness of rainforests or savannas, but the concrete landscape of cities and suburbs, where an entirely different kind of wildlife has learned not just to survive, but to thrive. We'll meet creatures that have rewritten their own biology in the span of mere generations, adapting to challenges their ancestors never faced. From birds that sing at higher pitches to pierce through traffic noise, to raccoons whose problem-solving abilities rival those of primates, to coyotes that have genetically shifted in response to human food. The story of urban wildlife is one of resilience, intelligence, and rapid evolution unfolding right outside your window. Cities should be hostile to wildlife. That's what logic suggests anyway. Where forests once stood, there is now asphalt. Where meadows rolled under open sky, there are parking lots and strip malls. Natural food sources have vanished, replaced by garbage bins and discarded pizza crusts. Predators lurk in new forms, not as wolves or bears, but as speeding cars and plate glass windows. The air carries chemicals, the water runs through pipes, and at night, artificial lights wash out the stars. By all measures, urban landscapes seem designed to exclude the wild. Yet walk through any city at dawn or dusk, and you'll find evidence to the contrary. Peregrine falcons nest on the ledges of skyscrapers. Coyotes trot through suburban neighborhoods, their eyes flashing in the glow of streetlights. Raccoons manipulate complex locks with their nimble fingers. Foxes raise their young beneath garden sheds. These animals haven't simply wandered into cities by accident. They live here, deliberately and successfully, often in greater numbers and with better survival rates than their rural counterparts. What separates the winners from the losers in this concrete ecosystem? Scientists studying urban wildlife have discovered that success in cities requires a specific constellation of traits. The most successful urban species tend to have smaller body sizes, allowing them to navigate the fragmented landscape more easily. They're dietary generalists, able to eat a wide variety of foods, rather than specializing in prey that may no longer be available. They demonstrate behavioral flexibility, the capacity to alter their actions in response to new challenges. And crucially, many possess what researchers call neophilia, a curiosity about novel objects and situations, rather than fear of them. But perhaps most remarkable is the speed at which these adaptations occur. Evolution, we learn in school, unfolds over vast stretches of time, requiring thousands or millions of years to produce meaningful change. Yet in cities, evolution operates on a different timescale entirely. The field of urban evolution has revealed something astonishing. Species can undergo genetic changes in just a handful of generations, when faced with the intense selection pressures of city life. This phenomenon, known as human-induced rapid evolutionary change, or HIREC, means that the animals living in our cities today may be fundamentally different from those of just a century ago. Consider the humble white clover plant. In Toronto and other cities, researchers discovered that urban clover produces far less hydrogen cyanide than its rural relatives. This chemical normally protects the plant from being eaten by herbivores. But in cities where large grazing animals are absent and where producing cyanide costs the plant valuable energy, natural selection has favored individuals that skip this defense. The change is genetic, passed down through generations, a clear example of evolution reshaping life in response to the urban environment. Water fleas living in urban ponds have evolved to mature faster and tolerate higher temperatures than their rural cousins. Anole lizards in Puerto Rican cities have developed longer limbs and stickier toe pads to better navigate smooth concrete and metal surfaces, a stark contrast to their forest-dwelling relatives who clamber over rough tree bark. Even rats in New York City show genetic changes, with evidence suggesting their teeth are adapting to a diet heavy in human food scraps rather than their traditional fare. This is evolution at human speed, visible within a single human lifespan. It's a reminder that the natural world is not static, frozen in time, but constantly responding to the pressures we create. Cities, far from being ecological dead zones, have become living laboratories where we can watch the processes of evolution and adaptation unfold in real time. Among the most dramatic success stories in urban wildlife are the peregrine falcons. These magnificent raptors, once pushed to the brink of extinction by pesticide poisoning in the mid-20th century, have made a stunning recovery. And nowhere is that recovery more visible than in cities. Peregrine falcons are designed for cliffs. Their entire evolutionary history prepared them for nesting on narrow ledges high above the ground, where they could scan vast territories for prey, and where few predators could reach them. When the first falcons began colonizing cities in the 1980s, they discovered something remarkable. Skyscrapers are artificial cliffs. The architecture of modern cities, with its towering buildings, stone facades, and narrow ledges, mirrors the natural habitat of peregrines almost perfectly. A ledge on the Chrysler Building in New York, the Tate Modern in London, or a bridge tower spanning San Francisco Bay provides everything a falcon needs. Height, offering both protection from ground-based threats and a commanding view of the hunting grounds below. A flat surface where a simple scrape in gravel or sand can cradle eggs. And perhaps most importantly, an abundance of prey. Cities are filled with birds, especially pigeons, and pigeons have become the peregrine's primary food source in urban areas. In New York City alone, 25 breeding pairs of peregrines were documented as of 2019, making it the largest urban population of the species in the world. Each pair requires a territory with sufficient prey, and the dense populations of city pigeons easily meet this need. Researchers studying urban peregrines have found that they eat more than 25 different bird species during nesting season. But pigeons, with their abundance and year-round presence, form the backbone of their diet. The hunting strategy of peregrines is breathtaking in its precision. They soar high above the city, sometimes thousands of feet up, scanning the streets and parks below. When they spot prey, they fold their wings and enter a hunting dive called a stoop. reaching speeds that have been measured at over 200 miles per hour, making them the fastest animals on Earth. The sheer velocity generates enough force to stun or kill the prey bird on impact. Then, the falcon catches it mid-air and carries it back to a feeding perch, often on the very building where it nests. This adaptation to urban life has been so successful that conservation efforts now include installing nest boxes on tall buildings specifically for peregrines. These boxes, lined with gravel to mimic natural cliff ledges, have been placed on structures from office towers to churches to suspension bridges. Many are equipped with webcams, allowing people around the world to watch as falcon pairs court, mate, lay eggs, and raise their chicks in real time. The images are intimate and surprising. Fluffy white chicks begging for food against a backdrop of concrete and glass. Parent birds tearing apart pigeons on a ledge 50 stories above a busy intersection. Young falcons taking their first awkward flights above the urban canyon. Cities have not only provided a refuge for peregrines, but may have contributed to their intelligence and adaptability. Urban falcons must navigate a more complex environment than their rural relatives. They dodge planes, avoid windows, learn the rhythms of human activity, and adapt their hunting to the movements of city birds. There's even evidence that urban peregrines are slightly bolder and more tolerant of human presence than rural birds, a behavioral shift that emerges within individual birds' lifetimes, but may also be reinforced across generations. The return of peregrines to cities represents a conservation triumph and a lesson in adaptation. These birds haven't conquered the city by changing what they are. They've succeeded by recognizing that the city, in all its strangeness, offers resources that match their needs. A skyscraper is a cliff. A pigeon is a meal. The city is not an enemy to be fled from, but a habitat to be claimed. In the suburbs of Toronto, in the parks of Chicago, in the alleyways of San Francisco, raccoons have earned a reputation as clever, persistent, and occasionally infuriating neighbors. They overturn garbage cans with practiced ease, dismantle supposedly raccoon-proof locks, and seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to find food in places humans thought were secure. To many people, raccoons are simply pests. To scientists studying cognition and behavior, there's something far more interesting. They're among the most intelligent animals in North America, and they're getting smarter. Raccoons belong to a relatively small group of mammals whose brains show a remarkably high density of neurons in the cerebral cortex, the region associated with complex thought, problem-solving, and learning. Studies have revealed that raccoons possess a number of cortical neurons comparable to small primates, which helps explain their cognitive abilities. Their intelligence manifests in multiple ways. They can learn and remember solutions to problems over long periods. They demonstrate flexibility in approaching new challenges, and they exhibit what researchers call innovation, the ability to solve problems they've never encountered before. One of the most revealing studies of raccoon cognition took place in Laramie, Wyoming, where researchers placed puzzle boxes in areas known to have raccoon activity. These weren't simple containers with a single latch. Each box had 24 compartments, each secured with a different type of lock. Inside each compartment, food. The goal was to see if wild raccoons could figure out how to open the locks and whether they could transfer their learning from one type of lock to another. The results were remarkable. About 25% of the raccoons who encountered the boxes successfully opened at least 3 compartments over the study period. Some individuals showed extraordinary persistence and problem-solving ability. One raccoon, nicknamed Great Basin, approached a box already occupied by another raccoon. Rather than waiting or fighting, he jumped on top of the box and worked the latches upside down, successfully opening a compartment and securing the food reward. This wasn't luck or random behavior. It was innovation, a creative solution to a problem that required spatial reasoning and physical dexterity. The study also revealed fascinating social dynamics. Some raccoons, rather than solving the puzzles themselves, waited nearby for another raccoon to do the work, then rushed in to steal the food once a compartment was opened. This scrounging strategy, while frustrating for the raccoons who did the work, demonstrates another form of intelligence: social learning and strategic thinking. These scroungers were essentially freeloading, conserving their own energy by exploiting the efforts of others. When the researchers introduced a new puzzle box with 4 different types of locks instead of just one, they discovered something even more intriguing. Raccoons who had previously learned to open the single lock box quickly generalized their knowledge to the new lock types. They demonstrated flexibility, adjusting their approach based on the specific lock in front of them, rather than mindlessly repeating the same action. And even some of the former scroungers, when presented with an easier lock option on the new box, switched strategies and became solvers themselves. The exposure to a simpler problem seemed to give them the confidence and knowledge to tackle harder challenges. As one researcher noted, it speaks to how learning begets learning. But the puzzle box studies only scratch the surface of raccoon intelligence. Their cognitive abilities extend into the real world in countless ways. Urban raccoons have learned to open car doors, unscrew jar lids, navigate through pet doors, and defeat an endless array of human-designed barriers. In Toronto, the city government has struggled for years to develop garbage bins that raccoons cannot open. Each new design, touted as raccoon-proof, is eventually defeated. The raccoons seem to approach these challenges with a combination of persistence, memory, and problem-solving that allows them to overcome most obstacles given enough time. Research comparing urban and rural raccoons suggests that city life may actually be making them smarter. Urban raccoons approach novel objects more quickly and boldly than their rural counterparts. They're more willing to manipulate unfamiliar items, to try different approaches when the first doesn't work, and to remember successful strategies for future use. This enhanced cognition likely stems from the constant problem-solving demands of urban life. Every trash can is a puzzle. Every fence is an obstacle. Every human intervention is a challenge to overcome. In this environment, the smartest, most adaptable raccoons thrive, and over generations, these traits become reinforced. The dexterous, nearly hand-like paws of raccoons contribute enormously to their success. With 5 highly mobile digits on each front paw and an unusually high number of nerve endings concentrated in their fingertips, raccoons possess a sense of touch that rivals that of primates. They constantly manipulate objects, feeling every texture and contour. Near water, they're often seen dunking and rubbing their food, a behavior that enhances their tactile perception. Wet paws provide even more sensory information, allowing them to discern details about what they're holding. This isn't about washing food, as commonly believed. It's about gathering information through touch. This combination of intelligence, memory, dexterity, and boldness makes urban raccoons formidable survivors. They remember where they found food weeks or months ago and return to those locations. They learn to recognize individual humans, distinguishing between those who chase them away and those who might drop scraps. They adapt their activity patterns to avoid danger, becoming more nocturnal in areas with heavy human traffic during the day. And they pass these behaviors down to their young, creating a culture of urban competence that builds across generations. The success of raccoons in cities raises profound questions about intelligence and adaptation. Are they simply exploiting the resources humans inadvertently provide, or are they genuinely evolving to become better suited to urban life? The answer appears to be both. Within individual lifetimes, raccoons learn and adapt. But across generations, there may also be selection for the traits that make urban life easier: boldness, curiosity, manual dexterity, and cognitive flexibility. The raccoons of tomorrow's cities may be even cleverer than those of today, shaped by the relentless problem-solving demands of the human jungle. If peregrines are the success story of urban birds and raccoons the masterminds of the mammal world, then coyotes represent perhaps the most dramatic example of a species, not just tolerating cities, but being fundamentally reshaped by them. Once confined to the open grasslands and deserts of western North America, coyotes now inhabit nearly every major city on the continent, from New York to Los Angeles, from Vancouver to Miami. Their expansion has been so thorough that an estimated 1,500 to 2,000 coyotes live in Chicago alone. And they're not just surviving. In many cases, they're thriving, living longer, and producing more offspring than their rural relatives. The key to coyote success is flexibility. Coyotes are generalists in almost every aspect of their biology. They'll eat small mammals, birds, insects, fruits, garbage, pet food, and occasionally larger prey like deer. They can live in forests, deserts, prairies, or suburbs. They adapt their behavior to whatever challenges they face. And increasingly, scientists are discovering that this adaptability extends all the way down to their genes. Urban coyotes behave differently from rural ones in ways that suggest deep-seated changes. In rural areas where coyotes are hunted and trapped, they're extremely wary of humans. They flee at the first sign of people, travel long distances to avoid roads and development, and primarily hunt during twilight and nighttime hours when human activity is lower. But in cities, where hunting is prohibited and persecution is rare, coyotes have become bolder. They navigate residential neighborhoods with confidence, often walking down sidewalks or trotting through parks in broad daylight. Their flight initiation distance, the point at which they'll flee from an approaching human, is much shorter in urban environments. Some have become so habituated to human presence that they barely react at all. This behavioral shift has both positive and negative consequences. On one hand, urban coyotes help control populations of rodents, rabbits, and other small mammals, providing valuable ecosystem services. On the other, their boldness occasionally leads to conflicts, including rare instances of coyotes preying on outdoor cats, or even, in extremely unusual cases, acting aggressively toward humans. Most urban coyotes, however, remain cautious and avoid direct confrontation. They've simply learned that humans, in the absence of hunting, pose little threat. What's particularly fascinating is that these behavioral changes appear to have a genetic component. Researchers comparing coyotes from urban and rural populations have found differences at the genetic level, particularly in genes related to behavior, cognition, diet, and stress response. Urban coyotes may be undergoing selection for traits that make city life easier: tolerance of humans, dietary flexibility, and even physical characteristics that help them navigate the urban landscape. One area of active research involves the coyote's diet and its genetic adaptations to human food. Rural coyotes primarily hunt small mammals like rabbits and rodents, but urban coyotes supplement their diet heavily with anthropogenic food sources: garbage, compost, fallen fruit from ornamental trees, and the occasional handout from well-meaning but misguided humans. This dietary shift may be driving genetic changes similar to those that occurred when wolves were first domesticated into dogs. Domestic dogs carry genetic mutations that enhance their ability to digest starch, a reflection of their long history, eating human food scraps, rich in grains and other carbohydrates. Researchers studying urban coyotes have hypothesized that similar selection pressures may be at work. If coyotes with a genetic predisposition to digest starchy, high-carbohydrate foods have an advantage in cities, those genes would become more common over time. While the research is still ongoing, preliminary evidence suggests this may indeed be happening. The coyotes of Chicago or New York may be genetically distinct from their rural cousins, adapted at the molecular level to a diet shaped by human waste. Beyond diet, urban coyotes have also adjusted their social structure and territorial behavior. In rural areas, coyotes often live in family groups with clearly defined territories. But in cities, where food is abundant and distributed unevenly, territories are often smaller and population densities higher. GPS tracking studies have revealed that urban coyotes navigate complex patchworks of green spaces, industrial areas, and residential zones, often traveling along corridors like railroad tracks, drainage ditches, and riverbanks that allow them to move through the city while minimizing direct contact with humans. They've also become predominantly nocturnal in urban environments, shifting their peak activity to the hours between dusk and dawn. This behavioral plasticity allows them to exploit the same spaces humans use, but at different times, reducing the potential for conflict. During the day, urban coyotes often rest in hidden spots like dense shrubbery in parks, beneath overpasses, or even in undisturbed corners of golf courses and cemeteries. At night, they emerge to hunt, scavenge, and patrol their territories, moving like shadows through the sleeping city. The story of urban coyotes is still being written, as cities continue to expand and climate change shifts the boundaries of suitable habitat. Coyotes are likely to become even more common in urban areas. Their adaptability, both behavioral and genetic, positions them as one of the premier urban carnivores, capable of exploiting resources and habitats that most other large mammals cannot. Whether this represents a new chapter in the coyote's evolutionary history, one that might eventually produce a distinct urban subspecies, remains to be seen. But the evidence is mounting that the coyotes of the city are already different from those of the wild, and that difference is growing deeper with each passing generation. The red fox is a creature of legend and folklore, often portrayed as cunning and clever. In cities from London to Tokyo to Bristol, that reputation is proving well deserved. urban foxes have not only colonized metropolitan areas across the globe, but have done so with a thoroughness and speed that surprised even researchers. And like coyotes, they're changing in response to their new environment, though in ways that are perhaps even more visible. In London, foxes have been part of the urban landscape since at least the 1930s, giving researchers nearly a century of data to examine. When scientists compared the skulls of urban foxes to those of their rural counterparts, they discovered striking physical differences. Urban foxes have developed shorter, wider snouts and smaller overall head sizes. The differences between male and female foxes, which are quite pronounced in rural populations, are also reduced in cities, with the sexes becoming more similar in size and shape. These changes didn't take millions of years. They happened within 100 years or so, an evolutionary eye blink. The most likely explanation involves the concept of self-domestication, a process similar to what occurred in the famous Russian fox experiments. When Dmitry Belyaev began selectively breeding silver foxes for tameness in the 1950s, he discovered that selecting for a single behavioral trait, reduced fear of humans, triggered a cascade of physical changes. The tame foxes developed floppy ears, curled tails, piebald coats, and smaller, more juvenile-looking skulls. These weren't traits Belyaev was selecting for directly. They appeared as byproducts, linked at the genetic level to the behavioral changes he was breeding for. Something similar may be happening to urban foxes, though without any human intentionally selecting for it. In cities, foxes that are less fearful of humans, more curious about novel food sources, and better at scavenging from human refuse, have a survival advantage. Over generations, these behavioral traits become more common, and just as in the domesticated foxes, these behavioral changes may be linked to physical ones. The shorter snouts and smaller heads of urban foxes might make them better at rooting through garbage and manipulating human food packaging. Or they might simply be side effects, genetic baggage that comes along with the genes for boldness and curiosity. Diet plays a central role in the urban fox's life. While rural foxes hunt primarily for small mammals like mice, voles, and rabbits, along with birds and invertebrates, urban foxes have diversified their menu considerably. Studies of fox scat in cities reveal a diet supplemented heavily by human-provided food. This doesn't mean they've abandoned hunting entirely. Urban foxes still catch rodents, particularly the rats and mice that thrive in cities. But they also scavenge from garbage bins, eat pet food left outdoors, consume fruit from ornamental trees and gardens, and occasionally receive direct handouts from people who enjoy feeding wildlife. This dietary flexibility is crucial to their success. Cities offer a patchwork of resources, unevenly distributed across space and time. A fox that can switch from hunting rats in a park to scavenging discarded takeout food near a restaurant to eating fallen apples in a suburban garden will always find something to eat. This generalist strategy, combined with their natural intelligence and agility, makes urban foxes remarkably resilient. Their behavior has adapted in other ways as well. Urban foxes are primarily nocturnal, venturing out after dark when human activity decreases. In high-density areas like central London, they're almost never seen during the day. But in suburban zones with lower foot traffic, some foxes have become bolder, appearing at dawn or dusk, and occasionally even in broad daylight. This variation in behavior reflects the fox's ability to assess risk and adjust accordingly. Where humans are a constant presence, stay hidden. Where they're scarce, take advantage of the daylight hours. Fox territories in cities are smaller than in rural areas, reflecting the higher density of resources. In some parts of London, researchers have estimated densities of around 12 foxes per square kilometre, far higher than typical rural populations. These high densities create complex social dynamics, with neighbouring foxes sometimes tolerating each other in ways that would be unusual in the countryside. Overlapping ranges, shared feeding sites, and even occasional group denning have been observed, suggesting that urban life may be reshaping not just individual fox behaviour, but their social structures as well. The future of urban foxes looks secure, at least in the short term. Cities provide abundant food, shelter, and relative safety from the natural predators and hunting pressure that foxes face in rural areas. As more cities adopt wildlife-friendly policies, and as people become more accustomed to sharing space with these animals, urban fox populations are likely to stabilize or even grow. And with each generation, they may continue to diverge from their rural ancestors, shaped by the unique selection pressures of city life. The urban environment is, above all else, loud. The sounds of traffic, construction, machinery, and human voices create a constant wall of noise that varies in intensity, but never truly disappears. For animals that rely on sound to communicate, navigate, and find mates, this acoustic pollution poses a profound challenge. And nowhere is that challenge more evident than in the songbirds that have made cities their home. Birds use vocalizations for many purposes, but none more important than attracting mates and defending territories. A male bird's song announces his presence, advertises his fitness, and warns rivals to stay away. For this system to work, the song must be heard. But in a city filled with the low-frequency rumble of traffic and machinery, many bird songs risk being drowned out, masked by background noise that overlaps with their vocal frequencies. Scientists studying urban birds have documented a striking pattern. In city after city, across multiple species, birds sing at higher pitches than their rural counterparts. Great tits in European cities, white-crowned sparrows in San Francisco, blackbirds in Vienna, house finches across North America, all show the same trend. Their songs have shifted upward in frequency, concentrating more energy in the higher-pitched portions of their vocal range. The initial explanation seemed obvious. Traffic noise is dominated by low frequencies, typically concentrated below 2 kHz. By singing at higher frequencies, birds could avoid the worst of the masking effect, ensuring their songs remained audible above the din. It was an elegant example of adaptation, birds adjusting their behavior to overcome a human-created obstacle. But as researchers dug deeper, they discovered the reality was more complex. When they modeled how bird songs transmit through urban environments, they found that shifting to higher frequencies provided only a modest improvement in communication distance, far less than what could be achieved by simply singing louder. In other words, if the goal was purely to overcome traffic noise, birds would get more benefit from increasing the volume of their songs than from raising the pitch. This puzzle led to a breakthrough in understanding. Researchers studying blackbirds discovered that frequency and amplitude, pitch and volume are linked in bird vocalizations. When birds produce higher frequency sounds, they can also produce them at higher amplitudes. It's a quirk of avian vocal anatomy, a physical coupling between the two variables. So, when urban birds shift to higher frequencies, they're not primarily escaping the low-frequency noise. They're accessing the parts of their vocal range that they can sing the loudest, which provides a much more substantial advantage in noisy environments. The studies of great tits revealed this principle in action. Urban great tits sing songs with minimum frequencies, about 1 kHz higher than rural birds. But the real benefit comes not from the frequency shift alone. It comes from the fact that higher frequency song elements can be produced at louder volumes. The combination of higher pitch and greater loudness increases the distance over which their songs can be heard by about 50% in urban noise, a significant advantage when trying to attract a mate or defend a territory. Further research revealed another factor shaping urban birdsong: the physical structure of cities themselves. Buildings, streets, and other hard surfaces create complex patterns of reflection and reverberation. Lower frequency sounds bounce off these surfaces, creating echoes that blur and distort the original signal. Higher frequency sounds, while they don't travel as far in open environments, actually transmit more clearly through the urban landscape because they're less affected by these acoustic distortions. The shifts in birdsong aren't purely behavioral adjustments made within an individual bird's lifetime. Some of the changes appear to be cultural, passed down through vocal learning. Young songbirds learn their songs by listening to adult males, and in cities, they're learning the urban versions, songs already optimized for the acoustic environment they'll inhabit. Over time, this cultural transmission reinforces the shift toward higher frequency singing, creating distinct urban dialects that can differ markedly from the songs of the same species in rural areas. In San Francisco, researchers documented this process over decades. White-crowned sparrows recorded in the city in 1969 sang at significantly lower frequencies than those recorded in 2005. The change occurred gradually, tracking the increase in traffic volume and ambient noise levels over the same period. When researchers played both historical and current songs to territorial male sparrows, the birds responded more strongly to the current songs. The modern songs, shaped by the modern acoustic environment, communicated more effectively than their historical counterparts. But not all the changes are voluntary or learned. Some may reflect selection, pressures acting on the birds themselves. If males that sing at higher pitches are more successful at attracting mates in urban environments, their genes will become more common over generations. This could lead to genetic shifts in vocal production, with urban bird populations evolving to be better suited to city acoustics. Separating these various mechanisms, behavioral plasticity, cultural transmission, and genetic evolution, remains an active area of research. But what's clear is that birds are changing, and those changes reflect the profound impact that human noise has on their ability to communicate. The acoustic challenges faced by urban wildlife extend beyond birds. Bats, which rely on echolocation to navigate and hunt, must contend with echoes bouncing off buildings and cars. Frogs, calling from urban ponds, adjust the timing and frequency of their calls to avoid overlap with traffic noise. Even insects like crickets show alterations in their mating songs when exposed to anthropogenic sound. The urban soundscape is reshaping communication across entire ecosystems, creating a world where only the most adaptable species can make themselves heard. Evolution is often portrayed as a slow process, glacial in its pace, requiring eons to produce meaningful change. But cities are revealing a different truth. When selection pressures are strong enough, evolution can happen in a handful of generations. And in urban environments, the pressures are intense. Consider the white-footed mice living in New York City's Central Park. These mice, surrounded by concrete and millions of humans, face a very different set of challenges than their rural relatives. One of the most significant is diet. In natural habitats, white-footed mice eat seeds, nuts, insects, and plant material. In Central Park, they have access to these foods, but also to a steady supply of human food waste. Breadcrumbs, discarded French fries, leftover hot dogs. This food is higher in fats and processed carbohydrates than anything in their evolutionary history. Researchers studying these mice discovered genetic changes related to diet and metabolism. The urban mice show evidence of selection on genes involved in processing fatty foods, similar to the changes seen in humans who transitioned from hunter-gatherer diets to agricultural ones. These aren't learned behaviors, they're genetic adaptations, emerging over just a few generations in response to the novel diet provided by human refuse. Similarly, brown rats in New York City appear to be evolving changes in their teeth and skull structure. The rats are exposed to a diet dominated by soft, processed human foods, rather than the harder materials they would gnaw in rural environments. Over time, this may be selecting for smaller teeth and altered jaw mechanics. The changes are subtle, visible only through detailed morphological analysis. But they represent real evolutionary shifts occurring in the heart of one of the world's largest cities. Urban heat islands, the phenomenon where cities are significantly warmer than surrounding rural areas due to heat absorption by concrete and asphalt, are driving changes in thermal tolerance and metabolism. Animals living in cities must cope with higher average temperatures, particularly during summer. Species that can tolerate heat stress or that have evolved more efficient cooling mechanisms have an advantage. Water fleas in urban ponds, for example, mature faster and tolerate higher temperatures than their rural counterparts, a shift that has both behavioral and genetic components. Even the timing of life history events is shifting. Some birds in cities begin breeding earlier in the spring than rural populations, taking advantage of the warmer temperatures and earlier availability of food. Over generations, this shift in breeding timing can become genetically reinforced, with urban birds evolving to be ready to reproduce earlier in the season. These changes can have cascading effects on ecosystems, altering predator-prey relationships, competition, and the structure of entire communities. The concept of urban evolution is forcing scientists to rethink long-held assumptions about how quickly species can adapt. Cities represent extreme environments as far from the ancestral habitats of most species as one could imagine. Yet rather than causing universal extinction, cities are creating opportunities for rapid evolutionary change. The species that succeed are those with the genetic variation, behavioral flexibility, and sheer luck to capitalize on these opportunities. Not all changes are genetic, of course. Much of what we observe in urban wildlife is phenotypic plasticity, the ability of individuals to alter their behavior, physiology, or appearance in response to their environment without changes to their DNA. A bird learning to sing at a higher pitch, a fox becoming nocturnal, a raccoon figuring out a new lock. These are often examples of individual flexibility rather than inherited traits. But plasticity and evolution are not mutually exclusive. plasticity can serve as a bridge, allowing populations to persist in new environments long enough for genetic adaptations to arise. And in some cases, the capacity for plasticity itself may be under selection, with urban populations evolving to be more flexible and responsive than their rural ancestors. The implications of urban evolution extend far beyond the cities themselves. As climate change accelerates and human populations continue to grow, more and more of the planet's surface will be dominated by human-modified landscapes. The species that thrive in these environments will be those that can evolve quickly, adapt behaviorally, and exploit the novel resources humans inadvertently provide. Understanding how this process works, which traits confer success, and which lead to failure, will be crucial for conservation efforts and for designing cities that support biodiversity. The future of urban wildlife is intertwined with our own. As cities expand and climate change reshapes the planet, the boundaries between urban and wild are becoming increasingly blurred. Animals that once avoided human settlements are moving in, driven by habitat loss, changing temperatures, and the promise of abundant food. And as they do, they're changing. Coyotes are expected to continue their northward expansion as warming temperatures make previously inhospitable regions more suitable. They're also spreading in countries where they're invasive species, like Japan and Germany, establishing populations in urban areas and adapting to local conditions. Each new city they colonize becomes another experiment in urban evolution, another opportunity for natural selection to shape their biology in response to human environments. Peregrines, having successfully reclaimed cities across their historic range, face new challenges related to climate change and habitat alteration. But their adaptability suggests they'll continue to thrive as long as tall structures and abundant prey persist. Conservation programs that began as rescue efforts are now shifting toward management, ensuring that urban falcon populations remain healthy and that conflicts with human activities, like aviation, are minimized. For raccoons, the future looks bright, at least from their perspective. Their intelligence, dexterity, and omnivorous diet position them as nearly ideal urban animals. As cities grow and raccoon populations expand, we may see further cognitive enhancements driven by the relentless problem-solving demands of coexisting with humans. The raccoons of the future may be even cleverer than those of today, a prospect that delights scientists and frustrates homeowners in equal measure. Foxes, particularly in Europe and parts of Asia, have become so well established in cities that they're now considered permanent residents. Ongoing research into their genetics and behavior will likely reveal further evidence of evolutionary change, particularly as populations remain isolated from rural gene pools and diverge along their own trajectories. The possibility of distinct urban and rural subspecies is no longer purely theoretical, but urban wildlife faces threats as well. Vehicle collisions remain a leading cause of death for many species. Diseases can spread rapidly in dense urban populations. Pollution, from chemical contaminants to light and noise, creates chronic stresses that affect reproduction and survival. And not all species adapt successfully. For every coyote or raccoon that thrives, there are countless others that decline or vanish entirely from urban landscapes. The concept of human-induced rapid evolutionary change, HIREC, has profound implications. It tells us that humans are not just destroying ecosystems, we're actively reshaping them in ways that drive evolutionary change. This isn't necessarily bad. Evolution is neutral, a process without morality. But it does mean that the ecosystems of the future will be different from those of the past, populated by species that have been selected, intentionally or not, for their ability to tolerate and exploit human environments. Coexistence will require thoughtful planning. Cities can be designed with wildlife in mind, incorporating green corridors, preserving patches of natural habitat, and minimizing sources of mortality, like roads and windows. Public education can reduce conflicts, teaching people how to secure garbage, avoid feeding wild animals, and appreciate the wildlife in their midst. And research can guide management decisions, identifying which interventions work and which create unintended consequences. The story of urban wildlife is ultimately a story about resilience and adaptation. It's about peregrine falcons seeing skyscrapers as cliffs, raccoons treating trash cans as puzzles, coyotes adjusting their genes to digest pizza, and birds singing a new song to pierce the noise. It's about evolution happening not in some distant wilderness, but right outside your window, in the park down the street, in the alley behind the grocery store. These animals haven't conquered the city by force. They've done it by being flexible, by being curious, by being willing to try new things and to learn from their mistakes. They've done it by being, in a word, wild. Not wild in the sense of distant and untouched, but wild in the sense of alive, adaptive, and constantly responding to the world around them. The human jungle is still a jungle. It pulses with life, much of it hidden in plain sight. And if you take the time to look, to listen, to notice the falcon overhead, or the raccoon in the shadows, or the fox padding through your garden at midnight, you'll find that the boundary between the city and the wild has always been more porous than it seemed. The wild never left. It just learned to live with us. As you drift off tonight, think about the world outside your window. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote is trotting down a suburban street. A raccoon is testing the latch on a garbage bin, its clever fingers working through the problem. A peregrine sleeps on a ledge 50 stories up, surrounded by glass and steel, but dreaming, perhaps, of the wind and the dive and the hunt. And in the morning, birds will sing, their voices higher and louder than their ancestors, calling to each other across the rooftops, telling the city that they're here, that they've adapted, that they've survived. The city is wild. It's always been wild. We're only just beginning to understand how. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into the hidden wildlife of our cities, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Bedtime Biology. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you noticed urban wildlife in your area? What surprises you most about the adaptations we discussed? Your feedback and suggestions help us continue exploring the quiet wonders of the natural world. Until next time, rest well and know that the world outside your window is far stranger and more alive than it appears.